If you're into diversity, you want to be a diversity officer at the NHS. They've already got 800. Well, there's another job going, 80 grand a year to be head of diversity at a hospital. So you might want to apply for that. We'll be talking about the derangement, what you might call diversity derangement syndrome. Why are we hiring so many of these people at great expense to the public purse? So that after the 9 o'clock news. First, let's talk about trans women. You may have wondered why so many blokes, just before sentencing, you know, when they've been tried for things like rape, murder, that kind of thing. You may wonder why so many of them suddenly decide they were born in the wrong body and they want to identify as women. It's so, in the past, it's so that they could get sent to women's jails, where, like someone called Karen White, not his real name, obviously, something White, called himself Karen, sexually assaulted 2 inmates while on remand at His Majesty's Prison, New Hall in West Yorkshire, a women's prison. So there's a new unit now, newish anyway. It's called it's at Downview Women's Jail in Sutton in Surrey, and this is the special trans women unit. It could be that blokes about to be sentenced fancy getting into there, because sounds like quite a holiday camp you get there. They've got a £10,000 games wall that the residents apparently never use. They spend all their time coming and going from each other's cells. They don't really have anything to do. They just spend most of their time watching television. It's a 16 capacity unit. It's called E-Wing, and there's currently only about 3 people in there. So they have a whale old time. So let's talk to the leader of the Party of Women, Kellie-Jay Keen. Welcome, Kellie-Jay.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very, very well. Now, I suppose this isn't such a bad idea. It's better than putting trans women, or blokes as we like to call them, into women's jails. But it does seem a lot of money to spend giving these people very special conditions. As I say, they've installed this huge, really expensive games wall that they can play, but they don't like to do that. They apparently just mostly watch television, coming and going from each other's cells. The local independent monitoring board described the imprisonment of these people, these trans women, as limited and unstructured. So it's not surprising, is it, that so many blokes, just before they get sentenced, go, oh, wait a minute, I was born in the wrong body, I'm a woman. They want to get to E-Wing at Downview Jail, don't they?
Well, how perplexing. I mean, I guess we should be grateful they're actually in prison, because I've heard they're rather overcrowded and Labour's letting everyone out. So maybe within a couple of years we won't need that at all, because we won't have any of men in prison. So joy to that. Look, the prison system's got no money. There's plenty of people in really dire straits and huge need. And I know that suicide is quite an issue in men's populations, and there's a lot of women in prison for really low-level, non-violent crime. To then have this sort of magic holiday camp-like ward for a few men who've decided they're women, it just doesn't make any sense, except for the other things that you're going to talk about later tonight, which is sort of diversity and inclusion. And then it begins to make sense that there's special money that seems to exist in this other sort of universe that can be found for these tedious and pointless exercises, which they might call diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, we do seem to bend over backwards, don't we, as soon as somebody says, oh, I identify as a woman. I mean, I think the most... it's a grotesquely absurd spectacle when you have the trial of an accused rapist, you know, like that bloke Isla Bryson up in London, up in Scotland, not so long ago. And you got barristers and the judge referring to, you know, she attacked her with her penis.
Yeah.
This is grotesque. This is ridiculous. When are we going to stop this nonsense, Kelly?
Well, look, I'm just going to say I'm very delighted to hear you use some of the language that you're using this evening. Because I remember
I've had enough of it. I've decided, me, Alex Phillips, Julia Hartley-Brewer, we're not going to play this game anymore. It's gone too far. We tried our best, but you tried our patience, so it's over. I'm with you.
I, like the rest of your audience, are absolutely delighted, and I think we've all had enough. And I think so we need to go to the Equality Bench book, which guides how courts work. We need to go right to the heart of the police and get the silly language out of the police, schools. I mean, this is why I started Party of Women, because the first thing we need to do is uproot something called the Gender Recognition Act, which allows legal fictions. And I think once we uproot that, then we can really start knocking out of all the institutions that we all pay for and we really don't quite understand. I want police, justice, I want all of that to be so boring. And just like a criminal is a criminal, a perpetrator is a perpetrator, a victim is a victim, and nothing else beyond the actual crime and the victim and the perpetrator really matter. It doesn't matter who the perpetrator is or who the victim is. And right throughout all our public services and institutions.
But don't you feel, Kellie-Jay, that now that Labour are in power, some of your work has been reversed? I mean, gender recognition, gender self-identification is going to be easier. It's likely that schools will not tell parents when pupils want to say, I'm a girl or I'm a boy, when they're nothing of the sort. It's likely that schools will continue to teach that there are 107 genders when there in fact are only 2, etc., etc. And we saw this syndrome beginning to come into play last week when the British Medical Association decided that the excellent Cass report, which condemned the madness, the cruel madness of giving kids puberty-blocking drugs that will affect the rest of their lives, was wrong. The BMA now wants to reverse that, wants to go back. So this kind of Labour administration, I think, is going to make your excellent work harder, don't you think?
Yeah, although it means that I've got something to do for the next 5 years. So, swings and roundabouts. But I'm quite concerned about any utterance of blasphemy laws as well, and I think that comes from sort of hate speech laws, and I think all of those things should make all of us very, very afraid for our free speech and liberty in this country. And I do think you're absolutely right. Labour are going to destroy any slight glimmer of hope towards the end of the Conservatives might have given us.
Yeah, and can we? I mean, why can't? The Tories sort of began to play with the issue. I think one of the most alarming aspects of what we're talking about is the teaching of kids and what happens at schools. So, under, the alleged right-wing Tory government, good old traditional educational values, schools were not telling parents when kids turned up and said they were born in the wrong body. They were keeping that secret from mums and dads, presumably in the assumption that the state raises children and not parents. Plus, and this is still going on, gender critical theories are being taught. Kids are being taught that there are 107 or 507 or whatever the latest silly number. There are that many genders. This is not stopping, and it should stop because it's not even scientifically true. Kids are being taught falsities by right-on teachers who think somehow or other all this nonsense is good.
Yeah, well, I think, look, the teachers were captured in their universities, and inexperienced teachers are cheaper. So therefore, we've got a lot of activists as teachers in our schools. And what's really frightening is not just that they omit to tell parents things, but I've been in a meeting with a parent, supporting a parent, where the teacher has barefaced lied to that parent and also confirmed that if a child misgendered, so-called misgendered, so if her little girl called a boy, she would get punished as if she was a bully. So I think it's really frightening what's happening to an entire generation of kids who, A, are too frightened to tell the truth because they're going to get in trouble, and B, may not even know what the truth is anymore and can't trust the adults in their lives to tell them. So I think that sort of harm, I think we don't have any idea really what that does to a society. And unfortunately, we're all going to be around to find out.
Yeah, did you see a story that we covered yesterday? The Bank of England has told all of its staff, you know, that they've got to use their shared pronouns, all that kind of rubbish. But what they wrote down for the staff was that to say that it is science, it's scientific fact that men and women are born as men and women is a microaggression. It's also true, isn't it? So it's this kind of Alice in Wonderland situation where we're asked to believe things that are scientifically and biologically not true. It's really concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, this goes back to what you said before about the NHS recruiting someone for sort of 80,000 a year for diversity and inclusion. If you're getting paid that much money, you have got to find some things to do in your job to make your job actually worthwhile. And I think that's what's happening. Like, microaggression, come on. Like, we're British. We roll our eyes. I mean, that's a microaggression. That just means you're tedious, do be quiet. And so I just think all of this the grown-ups need to come back in the room.
Yeah, totally. Kelly, I've got to go. But listen, you keep up your good work. Kellie-Jay Keen there. Next up, still to come.